want to welcome each and every one of you here this morning to our Torah Unleashed teaching here at the Olive Tree Fellowship Teaching Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And as always, if you're passing by New Mexico, come Albuquerque, come and visit with us. I want to thank all the ones that have visited, those of you that are coming in on YouTube from wherever in YouTube land, I guess we could say nowadays. But we want to welcome you to our study. And today we are studying our 13th Parsha in the yearly cycle, and it's Shemot. Shemot. And the word Shemot means names. Now, in Hebrew thinking, when you have a book, when you write a book today, we have titles for our books. In Scripture, the first important word in a volume, in a book, becomes the name of it. And so the book of Shemot is Ele Shemot. These are the names, plural. Shmi, Shem is name. The word Shem is name. So Noah's son Shem was named name. Shmi is my name. Shmo, his name. And so the word Shmot means the names. Ele Shmot, these are the names. And that became the name of the book. Not only did it become the name of the book, but it became the name also of the parasha. What a parasha is that the book, the scroll of the Torah, which we just read, is divided into 54 portions. The 5 books are divided into 54 portions. And the most important word in each portion becomes the name of that portion. Lech Lecha is arise and go to Abraham. That becomes the name of the third portion. And even the Psalms, in the book of Psalms, the first word, the first line and important words of that psalm become the name of the psalm. And of course, today we have different names for the psalms, but the first line. So when Yeshua was on the cross, and he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, he's saying, Elohim, Elohim, why have you deserted, forsaken me? Well, that was the name of a song. And so everybody in the audience, when Yeshua said that, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, everybody knew that psalm, and probably everybody started singing the psalm. Now, we know it as Psalm 22, but they didn't have numbers. They knew it as Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And so what Psalm 22 says, they were seen on the cross. And so Shemot becomes the name of the book and of the first parasha. Now, this is a long one. There are 18 subdivisions in this parasha. Every parasha has subdivisions, and this one has 18 of them. Of course, we can't go through all the 18, but we are going to come to as many as we can today. Now, here is the beginning of the nation of Israel. In Lech Lecha, where Adonai tells Abraham, arise and go, he becomes a patriarch of a people, Isaac and Jacob becomes the patriarch of 12 sons who in these 200 years in Egypt become tribes. The 12 sons, or 14 with Manasseh and Ephraim, they become the 14 tribes of Israel. And here in what is called the furnace of Egypt, Egypt is a furnace. And what happens in a furnace? What happens in a place if you want to make bread? You make bread in a furnace. You make food in a furnace. You heat it up. It boils. It makes the food. In a sense, Adonai put Israel in the furnace of Egypt. Now, at first, they went in there through Joseph, and they went in there as a people that were selected, and they were given the best land there in Goshen. They lived a good life under Joseph. But of course, Joseph died, and they all died. The fathers died, the patriarchs died, the 14 patriarchs died. And so the people grew in number, and they grew to become, as we're going to see at the end of Exodus, when they leave Egypt, they become a nation. Not just 12 tribes, but they become a nation. They become what Jeremiah 11:16 calls an olive tree. In fact, it says there in Jeremiah 11:16, Yahweh called your name a green olive tree, beautiful in fruit and form. Now, Jeremiah is rebuking Israel right here, telling them that you were this beautiful olive tree with fruit. You were a fruity tree. You were a green tree. But then he says, because of your unbelief, I'm going to cut you down and I'm going to burn you, and you're going to burn. And so we see that Adonai made Israel here in the furnace of Egypt. He baked them, in a sense, to become this beautiful loaf of bread, to become this beautiful food for Adonai, to become this beautiful tree. But again, we're going to see later on that there are consequences to not following Torah. And so let's go ahead and start our study here. And we begin with Israel in Egypt. Now it says there that in verse 8, after they named the names of the sons, and they talk about, Moses talks here about how Israel grew in number. They multiplied in Egypt. And when they multiplied in Egypt, one of the things that occurred is that a new dynasty, the old dynasty passed away, and they didn't have no more members to continue it. And a new dynasty with a whole new set of pharaohs, with a whole new set of administration came into Egypt. Now, excuse me, this is a picture of some Semites, maybe some of the people of Abraham's time coming into Egypt. And they came into Egypt, and they lived in Egypt. They had a wonderful life in Egypt. By the way, when you look at this picture from this relief from one of the places in tombs in Egypt, you don't see the people like you normally see them on movies about Abraham with long with turbans and things like that. And it is especially there in Egypt too hot to be wearing a lot of clothing. And this is typical of the clothing that you see not only of the Egyptians, and theirs was a little more risque in some areas. But of the Israelites, these are bearded Semites. These are probably Israelites here, as most scholars will contend. And so they lived in Egypt. And they lived in Egypt not for 400 years, 430, some say, some 450. They actually lived there for about 230 years. The 400 years that people say is from the time of Abraham to the Exodus. But they were into captivity from right after the time of Joseph for about 200 years. And then we go to verse 8. Then there came to power in Egypt a new king who knew nothing of Joseph. Well, a lot of people say, well, wait a second, we have a problem here. Because I thought Joseph was the second in command, and we have all these reliefs in the tombs and different palaces, all these reliefs of these pharaohs and those pharaohs. Who was the pharaoh who did not know Joseph? What was his name? Who was this person? Why don't we know about Joseph? Why don't we know about who he was? In fact, many people think that Joseph was Imhotep. Remember in the movie The Mummy? And Imhotep was the mummy, was this bad guy? Well, many people actually think that the mummy, and remember, Joseph was made into a mummy when he died. He was mummified. And many people think that Imhotep and the story of the mummy actually come from a true source. But of course, Hollywood always makes things different than what the truth is. But why do we need to know about who this Pharaoh was, and how do we know? Well, one of the reasons we need to know and we need to study who this Pharaoh was, for some reason, Moses doesn't give us the name of none of the pharaohs. If you watch the Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille, the Pharaoh is Ramses. Now, he was of another dynasty, another family group of pharaohs that ruled in Egypt. But he was of a later dynasty in the 12th century BCE. Now, we believe that the Exodus took place in the 15th century, in the 18th dynasty, not in the time of Ramesses. And so we have conservative scholars saying the Exodus took place here. Liberal scholars say, no, it took place over here. Which one is right? Well, if we were to identify which pharaoh was the pharaoh that did not know Joseph, and then the pharaoh who of the Exodus, then we'll know which is the right one. Again, the second thing is that if we knew who the pharaoh of the Exodus was, it connects us, the Bible text, to history, to actual history, because we know some of these histories. It's not complete. Egyptian chronology is not complete, and the scholars are have different times and places, and who they were, and mummies have been found. In fact, when I studied there at the Cairo Museum and studied all those, we looked at all these mummies of these people. And we saw who they were, and you could be there and studying in these areas. Gracias. And we need to know who the real Egyptian pharaohs were. This is what the scripture says. And then we interlock them with one another. We also look at what we would call the social political context. What was going on in Egypt at this time? Because there were times in Egypt that these governmental policies or those, and they changed. Religions changed. Different pharaohs served different gods. Some followed Ra, others followed Amun, different. And if we know who the pharaoh was, then we start saying, well, this was the reason that this happened. For example, at this time, if it was Ahmose the first, as we're going to see, which I believe it was, and most conservative scholars believe that, then we know why. Now we know why he was killing the babies. Because Ahmose the first, when he was the first ruler, in fact, I think I have a picture of him here. There he is. He became the first pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. And he issued what's called the New Kingdom. And he wanted to push all foreigners away. All foreigners had to be pushed away according to him. So if it's this guy who is the pharaoh that didn't know Joseph, then we know part of the history lines up in his political world, his religious world, the God that he served, and why this city was built and that city over there was even destroyed. By the way, when a new dynasty came in, what they usually did is they got a hammer and they hammered and they chiseled off the names of other peoples and other pharaohs and other things that people did. And sometimes you see that a certain pharaoh did something and the new pharaoh comes in and chisels his name out and puts his name in what another pharaoh had done in the past. And that might be one of the reasons why we don't have Joseph. We don't have some of his exploits, because his pharaoh might have been someone that wasn't liked and, again, chipped off the history. And so this is from 1540 to 1080, and this fits perfectly in the chronology of the Exodus from a conservative point of view. Now it says that there was a man of the house of Levi who had a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. So Moses was 3 months old. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch, and then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the banks of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. So she put him in a little ark. She put him in a little boat, and she just pushed it down the Nile. And this is the part of the Nile that was a protected part of the Nile. The Nile has a lot of crocodiles and other animals, but there was an area that was protected as part of the pharaoh's, part of the king's property and real estate, so that the children and the women could go bathe and do other things. And it was here that Miriam, put this basket so it could float down the Nile to where the Pharaoh's daughter. Now, this was strategic. This was something, she just didn't throw it down, let it go down the Nile. She wanted to do it over here. Now, this is Pharaoh's daughter. Now, one of the things about Pharaoh's daughter, and again, if we know the chronology, we might assume that Pharaoh's daughter at this point was a woman by the name of Hatshepsut. And if you study that, you'll find out that, in fact, there's a great monument to her. Her burial chamber is there still in Egypt. Was discovered, and the archaeologists went in and found out that this was her burial area. And so, was this Pharaoh's daughter? And by the way, in history, she became as a pharaoh. In fact, sometimes she even wore the pharaoh's beard, fake beard, because they didn't have a goatee that was real. It was fake. And she even wore that and was part of the pharaoh's ruling class, even fashioning herself as a pharaoh. And so all of a sudden it says that they coated in pitch and sent it away. Now, why did they do that? Because the pharaoh that didn't know Joseph decided that all the babies would be killed, all the baby boys. The baby girls would be kept, but all the baby boys would be killed. Now, in the olden days, there was midwives. They had midwives that would have help the women have the babies, and there was two midwives, and these Shupra and Pua, and these two midwives would save the babies, and they saved Moses, and of course the Pharaoh said, why don't you do this? Why aren't you killing the baby boys? And they said, for some reason, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. When it comes for an Egyptian woman to have a baby, it takes a long time. You know, they have to walk around the pyramids 2-3 times. But they said the Hebrew women, and there's a Spanish word, and correct me if I'm using this wrong, but there's a Spanish word that says ligera, that's ligera, like real fast, real fast. You know, they come real fast, and the word there is intensive. They, you know, the moment that the baby's time, you know, it's already there. So it's almost like they have them by themselves. They are like the animals, because if you notice, animals don't use midwives. All animals have usually over there in that corner or under the garage or someplace. And these women said that's the way Hebrew women are. That all of a sudden they have the babies. They're very fast. They come and they do it alone. You know, by the time we get there, they've already had the baby. So Moses was hidden for these 3 months. Now Pharaoh's daughter went along the Nile to bathe, and with her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies. By the way, in the movie, they don't know he's a Hebrew. She knew he was a Hebrew, and everybody knew he was a Hebrew. In fact, he would go visit his mother, and they all knew, the Hebrews knew that Egyptian prince of Egypt was actually a Hebrew. It was a known fact, not like the movie. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter. So that means that she followed them, and when she was bathing, Miriam was right there. And she said, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. And the girl went and got the baby's mother. And, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse it for me. I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. So his Jochebed, which was the name of the mother, Moses' mother, nursed her own. When the child grew, now notice what it says, when the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She adopted him. She named him Moshe, saying, "I drew him." Mosh, to lift up, to bring up out of the water. Now, this tells us something. How old was Moshe? I mean, it doesn't tell us, but from this verse, it tells us something. He was an older boy, which means that he might have been around 2 years old. Now, by the time you're 2, you are already have knowledge of language. Now, they were bilingual. Of course, they spoke Hebrew, but not only did they speak Hebrew, but they, by this time, after being 200 years in Egypt, they knew the language of the Egyptians. So these were bilingual people. And so Moshe not only grew up knowing Egyptian, but he also grew up knowing Hebrew. And then he is adopted into Pharaoh's household, and he becomes part of the princesses of Egypt. And now Moses was born around 1526 during the reign of Tutmosis the first. Now Pharaoh's daughter was probably had sheepsuit, and again, this is among the scholarly world and in all the different universities or seminaries that I've been to. Some of them believe it this way, some of them believe it that way. And when I went to Catholic University, they believed in Ramses and that. And when I've gone to other seminaries, they believe in Ahmose and Tutmosis the first and Tutmosis the third, and all these people from a conservative point of view. But again, I would encourage you to study that more on your own. Now, the first 40 years of the life of Moses were spent in Egypt, learning again from Pharaoh skills that he needed to be part of running Israel. Because remember, he grew up as a Pharaoh's daughter, as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, and he grew up as a prince of Egypt. Now, when he was 40 years old, he saw one of his own people being beaten by an Egyptian, so he killed the Egyptian. The next day, or sometime later, he actually saw one of the Hebrews fighting against the Hebrews. And he tries to stop him, and they tell him, "Well, are you going to kill us the way you killed the Egyptians?" Now, he was in fear of his life. Again, from what Pharaoh would do, because if Pharaoh found out he had killed an Egyptian, that would have been a capital offense. So what he does is he himself runs away. He's not sent away, again, like in the movie. He runs away. And he runs into the desert of Midian. Now, we're going to discuss this in another episode, where is the real Mount Sinai? Where is the real Mount Sinai? There are 5 Mount Sinais that are in the running. 2 of them, the one in the Sinai Peninsula and the one in the Saudi Arabia side, are the 2 top contenders. And we will find out where the desert of Midian and where Mount Sinai is. But while he was there, he shooed away some other shepherds, and the daughter of Yitro, the sheik of that area, he gave him water, and he marries he marries Zephora, and this would become Moses's first wife. Of course, Moses probably had 3 wives at the same time there, and we don't know what happened to Zephora, Itro's daughter, and then we have Reuel's daughter, and then we also have the Cushite that he married, that also we're going to look at later on with Miriam and Aaron. Now they had 2 sons, and he spent the next 40 years as a sheep herder in the desert of Midian. And there in the desert of Midian was this mountain that was called the mountain of Elohim, the mountain of Elohim. And there was something peculiar about this mountain, as again we're going to see in another episode, in that the top of the mountain was always like on fire. There was a cloud there, and there was thunders and lightning, but there was like a fire, and that's why they called it the mountain of Elohim. And he spent 40 years in that area. He spent 40 years wandering with his sheep in that area, until one day, as he was sheep herding, he saw a phenomena. He saw something that he had never seen before. Now, there's always times in the desert or forest where a tree will catch on fire, either because of lightning or someone's carelessness, and the tree catches on fire. And when the tree catches on fire, depending on the tree, how dry it is, it might take, 30 minutes, an hour, and it burns up, and the fire ends. But there's something about this tree, and this tree was on fire, and he sees it on fire, and he's probably attending the sheep, and as he's tending the sheep, he sees it on fire. Another half hour goes by, it's still on fire. An hour goes by, it's still on fire. What's up with this tree that it's on fire, but it doesn't burn up? And this is what I call the revelation of the presence. The presence of Yahweh, the presence of Elohim comes. And let's take that up in, let's go to chapter 3. Moses looked after the flock of Yitro, Jethro in English, in King James, Yitro, and the father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And it says there in verse 2, the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in the shape of a flame of fire coming from the middle of a bush. There was a flame of fire in the middle of the bush. You see the shape of a bush, but in the middle there was a flame of fire. And it says that the angel of Yahweh appeared. There was no angel form. It was the form of a fire. And Adonai reveals himself to Moshe. Now remember, this is the messenger of Yahweh. Now, the word messenger of Yahweh in your Bibles is the angel of the Lord. Now, the term angel just means a messenger. Could be a human messenger, could be a divine messenger. The divine messengers were these spirit beings. Now, remember, the spirit being angels are created beings. Hasatan is a created being. He is a cherub. He comes from the cherubim. He was created. All the angels are created. All these messengers are created. But the angel of Yahweh, the messenger of Yahweh, the Melech Yahweh in Hebrew, is an uncreated being. He is uncreated. He is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. He is the Word of Elohim. Now remember, in Genesis, it says that Elohim, in plural, He, singular, created the heaven and the earth. And the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of Elohim, merachefet al panai chatechom, hovered over the face of the waters. And Elohim, plural, He said, singular, Yehi or, be light. So when Elohim said, be light, the words that came out was the word of Elohim, was the pre-incarnate Yeshua. And the first message, the first word in the created order in the box of time-space was be light. And all of a sudden light became. And there we see the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. We see all three. This is the first triadic verse in Scripture. We see all three being part of the creation time. Well, that message, that messenger of Yahweh, that word of Yahweh, in Yeshua became flesh and dwelt among us. But in Tanakh, in Torah, He appears. He appears to Abraham. He appears to Isaac, to Yaakov. He appears. He appears here to Moshe. And He could appear as a person. He could appear, in fact, to Abraham. He appears to Abraham. He appears as a man. And the two other messengers, spirit being messengers, also appear as men. But over here, the pre-incarnate Yeshua appears as a burning bush, as a flame of fire. His appearance is a flame of fire. Later on, to Joshua, He's going to appear as the captain of the host. And of course, He dwelt among us. The messenger of Yahweh appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of the bush. Elohim called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe, take your sandals off because you are standing in holy ground. Now look at this. It is the messenger of Yahweh that appears in the midst of the bush. But it is Elohim, it is Yahweh who talks to him. The messenger of Yahweh is Yahweh, because we know that Yeshua is Yahweh. Yeshua is not the Father and He's not the Holy Spirit. Just like the Father is Yahweh, but He's not the Word and He's not the Spirit. The Spirit is Yahweh, but He's not the Father, He's not the Word, the Son. And so, from the midst, He calls unto him, Moses, Moses. So the messenger of Yahweh is Elohim. And this is a primary doctrine for the body of Messiah. This is a principal doctrine that the messenger of Yahweh, the angel of the Lord in King James speak, is Elohim, is Yahweh, and the pre-incarnate Yeshua at the same time. Stephen says, this is the Moses who said to the sons of Israel, Elohim will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brethren. This is the one who was in the ecclesia. By the way, look at that. For some reason, the word ecclesia is translated as church in the New Testament, but is translated as congregation in the Torah and Tanakh. It should be translated the same everywhere. Who was in the church in the wilderness, together with the messenger who was speaking to him on Mount Sinai, and who was with our fathers, and he received living oracles to pass on to you. That's what our Torah scrolls are. These are the living oracles of Adonai. So Moses was with the messenger. Again, as Stephen it is reiterating here. And so he says, I send you to Pharaoh. I send you to Pharaoh. This is Moses the third, the Pharaoh of the Exodus. We believe that the Exodus took place in 1445. And so he is sent to Pharaoh. And Moses then said to Elohim, look, if I go to the Israelites, to Bnei Israel, actually in the Hebrew, and say to them, the Elohim of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? Ma Shmo. If they ask me, Ma Shmo, what's his name? What am I to tell them? Elohim said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am. Ehyeh has sent me to you. Elohim further said to Moses, you are to tell the Israelites, Yahweh, the Elohim of your ancestors, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Yaakov has sent me to you. This is my name for all time, and thus I am to be invoked for all generations to come. Now this is very important, because he says, this is my name for all time. For a week, for a few years, as long as you are Israel. No. This is my name for all time, forever. This is the name that I shall be invoked, that I shall be called for all generations to come. The name Yahweh should have never been erased, should have never been taken away, should have never been hidden. And it's time to restore the name. You are to tell the Israelites, Yahweh, Yahweh. This is my name forever. Now, in Hebrew, right here, it says there, Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. I am that which I am. Ehyeh. Tell Israel, the sons of Israel, Ehyeh. Now, Ehyeh is a verb. It's the to be verb from the word chaya. It's the to be verb. I is. And it's an imperfect verb, which means that it's not in the past. It's in the present and in the future. You could even translate this in some areas, I will be who I will be. I am who I am. I is who I is. And then down here he says, uses the Yod He Vav He. By the way, these little dots and dashes under, these were put into the Torah scrolls in the Middle Ages. These were added by a group of traditional scribes, tradition Masora, so they call themselves Masoretis. A Masora is a tradition. So so these are the traditional pronunciations, not necessarily the original pronunciations. Because in every language, sometimes the vowels change, sometimes even the consonants, but most vowels change. In Spanish, Castilian Spanish uses the term comiste, that you eat, comiste. But here in New Mexico, we don't use that. We use the form that was used by King Philip II in Spain when the Spanish conquistadors came to New Mexico. He, because of a lisp that he had, couldn't say comiste. So King Philip would say comites. Now, when we say comites, people that know Castilian kind of laugh at us and say, you're pronouncing that wrong. Well, that's the way King Philip pronounced it, so everybody pronounced it that way. Once he died, they went back to the Castilian. So pronunciations change, even in English. Is it Missouri or Missouri? Or misery? I don't know. And so pronunciations change. And what the Masoretes did is they gave their traditional pronunciation of Hebrew of the Middle Ages, not necessarily of the time of Yeshua or the time of David or the time of Abraham or Moses when it was written. But we're going to see what the pronunciation is. Now, this is called the Tetragrammaton. It means the four-letter word, Yod He Vav He, or Yod He Wah He. The V and the W, again, depending on northern or southern, different times, just like in Hawaii. We say Hawaii. If you say Hawaii, the Hawaiians don't like that. You have to say Hawaii. I went to Hawaii. We are Hawaiians, not Hawaiian. The W and the V change. And same thing in Spanish with the B and the V. Is it barrio or barrio? Eres el barrio or eres el barrio? Different people say different things in this country. They say this. In Cuba, they say over there. The Puerto Ricans say something different. And the people from Zacatecas, even different. And again, it's right to left. So you start on your right and you read to left. Yod He Vav He, YH, WH, or VH. And again, here is the pointing that we would point with Yahweh. This is a kamatz, Yah, Y-A, Yah, H. This is a syllable divider, V or W. And then that's a segol, and H, Yahweh, Yahweh. It's a closed syllable word. It's what we call CVC. Consonant, vowel, consonant. Consonant, vowel, consonant. It's two consonant, vowel, consonants together. There are 22 consonants in letters, but Hebrew has no vowel letters. It's only consonants. When we read the Torah scrolls, it's very hard for me to read the Torah scrolls, as you probably noted, because it's all in consonants. There's no vowels, so I have to read it without vowels. The vowels are supplied by study and by memorizing what that word is. And so in the Middle Ages, Rabbinic Judaism invented these dots and dashes to supply what we would call today vowel sounds. And so with the divine name, there's 6 different, the Masoretes dotted it with 6 different vowels. Now here's some ancient forms of Yahweh from inscriptions. Here's a Greek Bible verse, and you see with the ancient Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew. Here's the Paleo Hebrew. Here's the modern Hebrew, Aramaic Hebrew, and here's the old Paleo Hebrew, like in the time of Moses. Eye, Asher Eye, I am who I am. I is, so his name is Eye. And now, Eye is a verb. But when we call people, we don't call them by their verb form. Like if a person is named Linda, we don't call her from the verb form. Linda becomes a noun. So Yahweh or Yahweh is the noun form of the verb to be. The to be verb and the noun form is Yahweh. Here's 7 reasons why I teach that it is Yahweh. We are going to go through these. And now, there is a Yehovah doctrine. There's a lot of people who use Yehovah. Mostly Nehemiah Gordon has been a teacher of that. Of course, Michael Rood, Dr. Miles Jones, other people. Many, in fact, many Messianic congregations are switching from Yahweh to Yehovah. And it's mostly itinerant teachers that have been teaching this. But I call this the Yehovah deception because I believe it is a deception, and this is not the true name. Over here, we will use Yahweh. Now, these are Nehemiah's teachers, and both are professors at the university, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and they, of course, disagree with Nehemiah, who studied there under these men. Is it ignorance, nonsense, or deception? It's ignorance if there's no knowledge of the true name and understanding of the arguments. There's a lot of people that use the name out of ignorance. That's what they were taught. They've never studied it, and so that's what they came up with. After knowledge of evidence, ongoing use of the name becomes nonsense. Why, after you have been given information and it's clear, do you go back to it and keep using it? Or is it deception? After extensive knowledge and understanding, is there an agenda or platform that is being presented? And we are told, this is my name. By this name shall I be invoked. Well, he already told us what his name was. So if someone's using a different name, a name that he would not use. Now, when He knows our hearts, so we know, like if I have a lot of people that my name is Dennis, but for some reason, when I say Dennis and they write it down, they always write it down as Denise. So I order a hamburger. Denise, well, I know that's not my name, but I know who they're talking to. But if someone keeps calling me that after I've showed them my name is not Denise, this is my name, then what's up with that? What are they trying to do? And I see the same thing over here. Now, where does this ignorance, nonsense, and deception come from? The Masoretic texts that they got the Torah scrolls and they pointed it with different points. The Christians are the one that misunderstood the pointing. The rabbis pointed it so that you won't pronounce it. You'll pronounce it wrong. So if my name is Dennis, Denis, and I take the vowels out and I get D and S, and I don't want people to pronounce my real name, so I took the vowels out. But my title is pastor. So the vowels of pastor, A, O, are inserted where the E and the I is. So then we come up with Danos. Well, that's not my name. Danos is, but that's what happened here. They took the vowels of Yod He Vav He, the A and the Kamatz and the Segol out, and they put the vowels sometimes of Adonai and sometimes of Elohim in there. They inserted them, and all of a sudden, they come up with a plastic name. They come up with a misnomer, a misname. And so that's what occurred. Again, one of the things that the Masoretes did also is they corrupted the original Hebrew text in certain areas so that it would not reflect messianic prophecies. So messianic prophecies that have to do with Yeshua, they changed the words. So we see that some of these areas, especially I believe in the name, and today it's interesting that some of the people that are saying Yehovah are not believers. They are not born again. They are not spirit-filled believers. Some of them, as Nehemiah, is not a believer, not a Christian, not Messianic. He is a Karaite Jew. And so some of these people from the outside are telling people on the inside who have the spirit of Elohim how we should be pointing it. And I believe that is part of the deception. Now there's two Masoretic groups, the Ben Asher and the Leningrad Codex. These are families of Torah scrolls that have come down telling us what the text says. Here's a copy of an ancient Aleppo Codex and Leningrad Codex, how they looked when they were being written. Here's the different families of the way people go from getting this manuscript, and then they copy it from here, then they copy it. So if there is a mistake in one, that mistake could also follow in the other ones. The first use of Yod He Vav He, of course, is in Genesis 2:1. This is the toldot of the heaven and the earth as they were created in the day when Yahweh Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Here are the 6 pointings. Now, this is a very important thing that I found. For some reason, there's not one pointing Yehovah. If every time that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh would be pointed with Yehovah, but throughout the scriptures, there's all these Yehvah, Yehovah, Yehovi, Yevi, Yehovi, Yeveh. And so there's all these, which is the right one? Now they've just said, oh, because Yehovah was pronounced that way in Christian Bibles and became Jehovah today, they're sticking with that one. Here's the scriptures that each one of those is found on. Now, there are as many syllables as there are full vowels. The Masoretic Yahweh has 1/2 vowel, and it has 2 full vowels, an O and an A and an O. So Yehovah is a Latin word that was devised in the 1270s by Raimundos Martini, who was a Roman Catholic Spanish monk. What he did, he got the Hebrew text with the pointing of the Masoretes, which was not supposed to be translated, not to be pronounced, and he transcribed it, transliterated it into Latin, and came up with Yehovah or Jehovah in modern language. Now, we go now into the Mosaic mission. Moses was called to gather the elders of Israel. Remember, they had elders. Think of it. The eldership is not something that Moses came up with. They had elders. All these 12 sons became 12 tribes, and there was elders. That was already set up. And at this time, the firstborn of any family was considered the priest in the family. There was no priesthood. It was by family. So the firstborn of every family would become the priest. Now it's the Levites and the Cohens, the sons of Aaron, that are the Kohanim, the priests. But at this time, the elders from every tribe. Go to Pharaoh. I want you to perform sacrifices to Yahweh. Now look at this. The sacrificial system did not begin also with Moses. In fact, it is Yahweh who started the sacrificial system. He was the first one to sacrifice when he sacrificed a lamb or a goat, we don't know which one, to clothe Adam and Eve. He clothed them with the skins of an animal. To clothe them with the skins of an animal, you had to sacrifice the animal. Innocent blood was shed by Adonai so that Adam and Eve could be clothed. Abel comes and sacrifices, and Adonai receives the blood sacrifice. We know that Abraham and Isaac and Yaakov, we know they sacrifice. The sacrificial system is important to Adonai. Adonai tells Moses, go 3 days' journey and sacrifice. He tells them the Egyptians are to be plundered, take their wealth. Moses is granted miraculous powers. The staff turns into a serpent. Leprosy, the blood, and all the different plagues that come. Aaron becomes the mouthpiece of Moses. So he's given a mission. Um, and so Moses and Pharaoh stand before Egypt and say, let my people go. Let my people go. My people need freedom. You know, we call this the Exodus. To exit, to leave. Why? Because Pharaoh and the Egyptians were coming against Israel, the people of Elohim. They were told, in fact, Abraham says, you're going to go in, and after 400 years from this time, you're going to come out. And the Egyptians made them into servants. Egypt became the thumb where Israel was made into slaves. And Adonai says, I'm going to set my people free. Go tell Pharaoh, set my people free, because they were in bondage. But there are another exodus that is of importance, and that's the exodus from sin. Now, every one of us has been in bondage to this sin. Different kinds of sin, different kinds of situations in our life. But what Yeshua did on the cross is he gave us the true exodus. He set me free from my sin. And he set you free from your sin. And he could set anybody free. Give us liberty from the bondage of sin. Sin is a bondage. Sin keeps us bound. Hasatan and his demons are the taskmasters, constantly coming against us. But let me tell you, Adonai wants to set people free. Adonai wants to set every one of us free, not only from the guilt and shame of sin, but from any situation that is holding us in bondage, whether it's alcohol, whether it's immorality, anything that is holding us in bondage. Adonai wants to set us free. He wants to set you free. But there's also another exodus that's coming, a second exodus. Now, people are saying we are living in the times of the second exodus. No, we're not. The second exodus is going to be when Yeshua comes back, and he's going to take us out of the world system, take this world out of the beast system, and take us into the promised land of the millennium. The millennium is going to be the new Israel, a new Jerusalem, not the new Jerusalem of eternity, but a new Jerusalem in this world, where the present Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And Yeshua is going to come and build a new temple, Ezekiel's temple. And there's going to be a new exodus that Adonai is going to take out. Could be beginning now, but we are not in the new exodus now. In the second exodus. That's out of the world system, into the millennial kingdom of Israel. But the thing was, what Adonai wants done is he wants us to surrender. You know, the Israelites, all they needed to do is surrender. On Passover night, they surrendered. Many times they didn't surrender. They wanted to do their thing and they died. Surrender brings life. Surrender to Adonai, surrender to his word brings life. And this is what Adonai wants to give us. All we have to do is surrender. Moses surrendered. He took him out from sheep herding, took him to Pharaoh, and there he began a new sheepfold, the people of Elohim. Let's stand. Adonai, for anyone who is bound to different things, you want to set us free. Father, many of us are bound to different sicknesses, diseases. Father, you want to set free. And I pray right now, Father, that you would set each one free. Free, Father. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Set free from sickness even right now throughout this congregation. In those that we're calling their names right now. Set free, Father, from disease, from fear, from doubt, from worry. Set free, Father, from depression, oppression. Set free, Father. Only you could set us free. As you set Israel free through Moshe, set each one free through Yeshua by the power of your Holy Spirit. Yahweh vaish merecha. Ayir Yahweh panavelecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panavelecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.